With the world distracted by the war on Iran, Israel expands further into the West Bank, Lebanon, and Gaza. As settler violence grows, the building of illegal settlements moves forward, all while Israeli troops continue the demolition of Gaza and push further into southern Lebanon. While many fear annexation is the end game, the more immediate concern is grave human rights violations. So can it be stopped? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is Israel's expanding occupation. U.S. President Trump has been known to contradict himself, but one thing he said clearly just 6 months ago was that Israel will not be allowed to annex the West Bank. Today, however, it seems Israel is on a clear trajectory to do so, even if not formally declared. Increasingly violent settlers have forced Palestinians from their West Bank homes, and in violation of a ceasefire, more buildings are being demolished in Gaza. Israel now occupies more than 50% of Gaza's eastern territory, all while moving further into southern Lebanon, vowing to destroy dozens of homes and villages there. Here's a look.
The US-Israeli war on Iran is capturing global headlines. But that focus is also providing a smokescreen for Israeli activities, many illegal, closer to home. More than 1 month since the February 28 strikes on Iran started, Israel's attacks on Lebanon continue unabated, in spite of a nominal ceasefire which is violated daily.
More than 1.1 million people have now been forced from their homes, having to flee their homes sometimes more than once. All displacement orders from the Israelis continue to impact newer areas. In 1 month, nearly 15% of Lebanon's territory has been impacted by displacement orders issued by Israel.
Israel says it's doing so to neutralize Hezbollah weapons and arms caches in the south of the country and create buffer zones. But what one person might call a buffer zone, another might call a land grab. And some Israeli lawmakers are even openly calling for territorial expansion.
The current campaign in Lebanon must end with a fundamental change in the situation. Beyond the defeat of the terrorist organization Hezbollah, the Litani River must be our new border with the state of Lebanon, just like the Yellow Line in Gaza and like the barrier at Mount Hermon in Syria.
Israel has wrought devastation on Lebanese towns close to the border. Once bustling villages are now ghost towns, shadows of their former selves. 3 Lebanese journalists were killed in the final few days of March, the UN calling for a full independent investigation. Even the capital, Beirut, has been repeatedly struck by Israel. For Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, attacks and encroachment from illegal Israeli settlers have surged.
We can no longer sleep or relax. We constantly feel that settlers might attack us or enter our homes. Look at this entire area. These are all Area A zones. They came this morning and took them. They took 40 sheep a few days ago. And the day before yesterday, they came to steal 20 more. To whom we can complain?
In the 12-month period ending in October last year, a UN report documents 1,721 incidents of illegal settler violence and property damage compared to 1,400 the year earlier. 84 new outposts were also established during the same reporting period. Israel recently announced new construction and housing projects in areas of the occupied West Bank traditionally designated for Palestinians. And in the Gaza Strip, the Yellow Line, meant to be temporary as part of ceasefire agreements established in October last year, look increasingly permanent, with all the hallmarks of a new de facto Israeli border with military outposts being created. More than 200 people, including women and children, have been killed in the zone immediately adjacent to the Yellow Line since the ceasefire in Gaza began. With the war in Iran pulling focus and the world's attention divided, Israel is hoping that territorial expansion might slip under the radar of scrutiny.
So, as Israel moves forward on 3 fronts, is an illegal expansion being ignored? And could the damage be irreversible? Joining me now to debate that and more are, from Beirut, political and geopolitical affairs consultant Mona Alami. From Washington, former U.S. State Department official Charles Blaha. And from Tel Aviv, political analyst and contributor to Haaretz, Akiva Eldar. Thanks all so much for being with me. Akiva, I will start with you in Tel Aviv. And is the distraction of the war on Iran kind of a dream come true for those who hold expansionist or greater Israel views right now, especially the settlers?
When it comes to the Israeli government, actually, you forgot another front. This is the domestic front. Netanyahu is challenging the Israeli opposition by all kind of names that he's using, like, you are not supporting our soldiers, blaming it on them. So there is another front at home. But with Lebanon, it looks like it's a deja vu. We've been there in '82. It took us 18 years to get out of there. And now I believe that as long as President Trump doesn't seem to make up his mind if he wants to put an end to the war in Iran, Netanyahu will take advantage to gain some more territories. And for him, territories or any kind of occupation is better than negotiations. If he has to choose between escalation and diplomacy, it's very clear that he prefers territorial assets. And this is this government doing in all frontiers. They're doing it at the same time, not only in Lebanon. This is what they're doing in the east, in the West Bank. We are very lucky that we have the Mediterranean on our west. Otherwise, the expansion would go also to this direction, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Akiva, what do you think he sees right now as the easiest wins as far as annexation would be concerned?
I think that in all frontiers, including Lebanon, he put the threshold very high. And he actually prefers the escalation to what the Lebanese government has, for the first time, offered Israel, is negotiations. And for him, it can be a slippery slope, because if you start negotiations, you have to offer something. And what we have to offer is negotiations over 13 points of friction on the border. There is no recognized border on any part of Israel, any frontier, not the border between Israel and Syria, which Israel is also using the escalation that started in October 23. We are on the Syrian Mount Hermon, and we are in Gaza, and we are expanding the settlements in the West Bank.
Interesting, yeah. So you've really described 5 fronts, the 3 we've mentioned, Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, but there is also Syria. You're right about that, and what Netanyahu sees as the domestic front itself within Israel. But let me turn to Mona and ask where you see the expansionism that Akiva's been talking about and what we brought this program up for. Where do you see it going in Lebanon?
I think that we are going back to a scenario we've already faced several times. The 1982 invasion of Lebanon that ended in 2000 with the resistance of Hezbollah. I think that the Israelis are going for a scenario that is similar, but that will only go to the Litani River. I think that Israel today does not believe that having a security border that's within 5 kilometers of Lebanon is enough, and it requires more territory, which means that if it will if it will include all the territory until the Litani River, that's around 10% of our country.
Yeah. Do you describe it, Mona, as Israel creating a buffer zone, or do you see it as a land grab?
I think it's both. I think it started as a buffer zone. Today, it's not just about accusing Israel, but today we are faced with a non-state armed actor in Lebanon that is quite powerful, which is Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is the one who launched the Harb al-Isnad, or the support war, and that ended in 2024, to support the operations in Gaza that were launched by the Israelis. And this has led us today with the situation we are facing, with Israel advancing in the south, and Hezbollah, despite all of its claims, withdrawing a little by little, and more importantly, they're being led directly now by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, which was not the case during previous occupation or battles.
Do you see, though, quickly, Mona, what Israel is doing in the expansionism, especially the fact that it's also looking at raising some Christian villages and evacuating those as part of creating the buffer zone, as it says? Still, do you think this could backfire on Israel and that they might be empowering Hezbollah, or do you think Hezbollah, because of Israeli action, is genuinely being degraded and ultimately taken down?
Hezbollah has been genuinely been degraded since 2024. What really changed this time, it has been degraded. We only have to look at the party structure. The party nowadays is divided into three centers of power. One that includes Naim Qasim, and that includes former fighters who fought against Israel until 2000. You have a second branch and a third branch that is directly led by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. And it is the Iranian Revolutionary Guards faction of Hezbollah that launched the first 6 missiles this year that led to the current war.
Okay. Let me turn to Charles then, and I'd like to get a U.S. perspective about, well, first about the annexation primarily of the West Bank. I mean, Trump had said clearly that Israel cannot annex the West Bank, but some might argue that that was back when the Abraham Accords really mattered, and that's all in question now. So is Israel on its way to annex the West Bank without formally declaring it, and will the Trump administration allow them to get away with it because it's not a priority of any sorts now?
Well, for years, across both Democratic and Republican administrations, the U.S. has opposed outright annexation, but has never applied genuine pressure to Israel to prevent it. And I expect that to continue. The U.S. is also not paying sufficient attention to the growing settler violence on the West Bank, which is, obviously also linked to the expansion of settlements. There has been some attention to cases where settlers in the West Bank have killed Palestinians who are also American citizens, but that has been pretty limited. So unfortunately, I think the U.S. will rhetorically oppose annexation. I am pessimistic that the U.S. will apply any genuine pressure to stop or to reverse the continued settlements and the continued moves that move closer and closer to annexation.
And what about Lebanon? Same scenario applies?
Well, Lebanon's different. Lebanon, as Mona has laid out, as we all know, is a very complex political and ethnic situation. But in the U.S. right now, it's only seen through the lens of our involvement in Iran. And it's only seen through the lens that Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy. And the U.S. right now will probably give the green light to anything Israel is doing up to the Litani River. The U.S. will not have expressed concerns or put any pressure on to prevent a permanent compromise of Lebanon's sovereignty by establishing an occupation. And I would also be pessimistic that the U.S. will put any pressure on the IDF, on Israel, to allow civilians, both Christians and Shiites and others, to return.
Okay. Akiva, let me come back to you and we'll talk about one of the other fronts, being Gaza. There is supposed to be a ceasefire in Gaza, but buildings are still being demolished, homes are being destroyed. Is Israel defeating an enemy here, even if in violation of international law, or is it strictly looking more at another sort of land grab now in Gaza, in coordination with what President Trump had said was his ultimate kind of dream here of developing the Gaza Strip for even commercial purposes?
I would add one more lenses. Charles just offered that we have to look at the escalation in Lebanon on the lenses of the war in Iran. I can see everything now through the lenses of the Israeli elections that will happen in October, maybe even before that, but let's say in 6-7 months there will be elections. And Netanyahu is looking at everything, including the war in Iran, the war in Lebanon, Gaza, which, the buffer zone is more than 50% now. And it looks like provisional, but with the experience we have in the West Bank, what started in 67 as provisional turned out to be permanent. So Netanyahu is actually asking this question, what I should do with Gaza and Lebanon, his political advisors, his campaigners. This is not a regional or international issue. It is, he said that Israel is now a regional superpower, if not a global superpower, and he wants the Israelis to look at him as the savior of Israel. We have to be strong. And just to remind you, Andrea, this week, Israel passed a bill which is unbelievable, was unbelievable. A Kahane passed a bill that will have to make the death penalty a default when it comes to Palestinian terrorists, only Palestinian terrorists. And this is while Israel is not able to challenge the Jewish terrorists, as Charles mentioned, that are killing Palestinians, that are intimidating Palestinian women and children.
It's also deeply disturbing, and so much of it is just getting blurred within the context of war on too many fronts right now, and the priorities being put elsewhere, justifiably so in some cases, but these tremendously disturbing issues are now being overlooked. But let me come back to Mona. Let's try to stay on track of what's happening then in southern Lebanon at present, because if the Israeli army goes further, this does turn out to be a land grab of sorts, and Lebanon is looking at losing some 10% of its territory. What should the Lebanese government be expected to do about it?
The Lebanese government intention, and Nawaf Salam, our prime minister, has stated that he would like to go into direct negotiation with Israel, and I think this is the only solution. However, as I told you, we have a state within a state, which is Hezbollah, and now it is completely in the hands of the Iranians. So, regarding the negotiations, a committee was formed that includes academics, politicians, some of them very extremely prominent in DC. However, the Shiite community, because we are a complex religious country made of many communities, we have to include all the communities in that committee. And the Shiites, who are, the supporters of Hezbollah, are refusing through Hezbollah and the parliament spokesperson, Nabih Berri, they are refusing to participate to these negotiations. So we are in a situation of stalemate, and it is terrible because this means that it will only render the situation and worsen the situation when it comes to the demographic. We have between 600 to 800,000 people who have left their homes in South Lebanon. 600,000 of them will not return if Israel takes all the region until the Litani. This means that they are living in other areas that are religiously different. And this could cause many problems in Lebanon with clashes between communities.
Okay, Charles, let me ask you a question that actually is suited for both you and Akiva very much so. But, some argue that Trump's strategy is to destroy first, then do a deal. Do you think Israel has adopted that strategy now as well, or is there really no intention whatsoever to talk to anyone on the other side while it has what it maybe sees as the momentum and knowing that the world's attention is turned elsewhere?
Well, I'll let Akiva talk about what's going on in Israel. What I would say is it's always a mistake to assume Donald Trump has a strategy. He does things very, very improvisationally, and all the signs are that this was what prompted him to approve military action in Iran. The sense is that he is looking for an off-ramp, and it's going to be very, very difficult to find. If President Trump finds an off-ramp, then I would predict that actually, unlike in other areas, the president would apply significant pressure to Israel to cease attacks. Remember that under U.S. law, 60 days after the commencement of hostilities, U.S. military involvement must cease unless Congress approves it.
Yeah.
The president and many Republicans do not want to see that vote. That would put them in a very difficult political position of prolonging a war that is pretty unpopular, including with President Trump's own supporters.
Yeah.
So there is incentive there for the president to stop the war before that 60-day limit. And the long-term strategic challenge for the U.S. is to avoid an Israeli-type mowing the grass approach with Iran.
Speaking quickly, Charles, of those domestic supporters and non-supporters in the United States right now, is it still really difficult to rally, in support of Palestinian rights, even just to bring attention to what's happening? Or has sentiment changed now? Because we'll remember Palestinian activists being arrested and, universities being, right. Has that changed? Is there a real, go ahead.
There is a change in public opinion, including on the Republican side. But the basic answer is yes. And making pro-Palestinian statements and supporting Palestinians is difficult, especially for foreign students in the United States. And part of the problem is the U.S. media gives very little coverage to the plight of Palestinians, say in Gaza or the West Bank, but does give very prominent coverage to anti-Jewish acts, both in the United States and abroad.
Okay. Akiva, I'll tell you what, we just have a minute left, so I'd like to get your final thoughts, especially on Charles' analysis and what Mona had said earlier.
I can add to what Charles said, that also in Israel, the public opinion is moving away from the coalition. We can see it in the polls, and maybe Paula and I will be able to meet and shake hands when right after the elections, when there will be a new government. To remind you, it was Ehud Barak's government that pulled out from Lebanon, in 2000. And hopefully there will be a government that on top of this priority will be negotiate a peace agreement with the Palestinians, both in Gaza and in the West Bank. And hopefully President Trump will have to take into consideration the next Congress that will be more balanced, and the Democrats be willing to put their extra dollar and tell Israel that enough is enough.
Okay, Akiva, that will have to be the final word. Unfortunately for this edition of the Newsmakers, I'd really like to thank all three of you so much for being with me, and our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.